Sung Min sat down on the ground looking in pain. Thank you, but I'm tired after the match with Rosalind. Combat magic consumes a lot of mana. Keisen showed a sad look. Really, Sung Min immediately comforted the boy. I want to fight you in your best condition. In fact, Sung Min is secretly worried about his own life. If I fight with you when you are this excited, damn main character, I don't think I'll survive. Keisen naively thought Sung Min was telling the truth, so he politely replied, thank you. Sung Min tried to avoid the boy's foolish eyes. It's nothing. But then Keisen continued to insist, so will you fight me tomorrow? Sung Min tried to suppress a sigh in his heart. It seemed like he wanted to fight with me as a birthday present. He finally reluctantly told Keisen, okay, after taking the medicine that Rosalind gave. Sung Min's wound healed immediately. After healing, Sung Min approached Rosalind. I want to ask you something. Rosalind coldly glanced at Sung Min. Me? What's wrong? Sung Min continued to say, just now you used soul fighting to fight me. Rosalind interrupted Sung Min with a frown. Are you planning to insult me again? Sung Min laughed and replied, you know I wouldn't do that. Rosalind raised her voice to ask, then what? Sung Min said honestly, when you hit me, I felt something. Rosalind narrowed her eyes at Sung Min with disgust. What, a pervert? Sung Min hesitantly explained, I don't know, it's like realizing something. I can almost feel it, but I'm not sure. After hearing this, Rosalind felt confused. She became even more frustrated and smacked her lips. What the hell are you talking about? Sung Min suddenly suggested, please help me, I think your martial arts skills will make me stronger. The unexpected proposal shocked Rosalind. The girl raised her face arrogantly and asked Sung Min, why should I help you? Sung Min tried to persuade, just think of it as a debt that I will repay you later. A sad look flashed in Rosalind's eyes when facing a Larson who was no longer as overbearing as before. Every night I promise myself that I will take revenge, but now my intention is gone. Suddenly Magner interrupted the two children's conversation with a delighted smile. Haha, just try it, Rosalind. Rosalind expressed disagreement and was about to refute, but Magner helped convince her that openly helping the son of a famous magic family wasn't bad. Rosalind sighed and reluctantly stood up. So I will help you once. Sung Min grinned. Thank you. Rosalind snorted softly and reminded him, remember to repay me. Sung Min immediately nodded. Sure, I swear by the title of future magician. Ailia, who had been listening attentively all this time, was suddenly startled. In the name of the future mage, Ailia felt even more excited about Sung Min's radiant aura. Did he really say that? Saying that was the same as asserting that the boy would participate in the inheritance war as a potential heir of the Magner family. Ailia glanced at Magner and Karsha, who were also equally surprised. She said so in front of the heads of two famous families. Truly the spirit of Matan. Rosalind began to release her power and carefully asked Sung Min, I just need to hit you like before, right? Sung Min smiled confidently and nodded, yes, I'm ready. Rosalind frowned slightly in worry. I can't even call it martial arts. The girl knew that she could not control her soul fighting, so it was very dangerous. Rosalind obeyed Sung Min's will, closed her eyes, and punched straight with all her strength. It's not my fault that you were injured. Sung Min stood and took the attack in the middle of his stomach, causing his stomach to churn. Despite the pain, Sung Min still tried to stay awake and observed the magic circle in his heart. There was definitely a reaction. The mana in my heart reacted to Rosalind's incomplete fighting soul. Rosalind worriedly looked at Sung Min, who was gritting his teeth and enduring it. Is that okay? Sung Min firmly told her, one more time. Rosalind shouted in confusion. Oh really? Right after that she clenched her teeth and used the move again, still aiming for the spot slightly below Sung Min's chest. Magner carefully observed everything but still couldn't understand what Sung Min was doing. What was going on? He seemed to want to test something. Meanwhile, Sung Min continued to ask Rosalind to punch him again. Karsha also shared the same feeling of curiosity and concern as Magner. He directly asked Ailia, Miss Ailia, what is your young master doing? Ailia thought for a moment, and then said, it seemed like the mana in Larson's heart reacted to Rosalind's fighting soul. Karsha continued in surprise. How to react? Ailia shook her head while trying to look closely at the point where Rosalind's punch came. I'm not sure, I just know there was a reaction. Seeing Sung Min clutching his stomach and coughing, Rosalind stopped and looked worriedly at him. Are you okay? Sung Min shook his head to signal to the girl that he was okay. Sung Min was deep in thought. I was sure my transcendent mana reacted to the fighting spirit. But according to the setup I wrote, fighting souls and mana cannot be mixed. After a moment of contemplation, a light flashed in Sung Min's eyes, meaning the accuracy of the story was decreasing. The system suddenly displays a message. You discovered the inaccuracy yourself. You were given the ability to fill in an incorrect element. Sung Min's mind was immediately opened. What I have to do in this imprecise world is not just to survive. What if the probability is not met properly? What if the order of this world cannot be protected properly? This world will collapse, meaning it must be built more solidly. When Sung Min thought clearly, the book he had set up earlier suddenly fell into his hands again, making him surprised. Around Sung Min, the world began to turn gray. It felt like time in this world had stopped. Just a moment later, gray had enveloped everyone except Sung Min, and he could tell that the time that had stopped was more than just a feeling. Perhaps as the world is being established, time will stop. The setup book was automatically opened in Sung Min's hand and found pages displaying unreasonable content. Very soon, bold text appeared on the page. The fighting soul of a famous martial arts family. The mana of the famous magic family. The two cannot be mixed. But during the match between Larsen Mayton and Rosalind in January 219, Larsen Mayton's mana reacted with Rosalind's fighting soul. The following paragraph stating the reason for this was left blank. A familiar pen appeared in Sung Min's hand, making him understand. I have to fill in the blanks. The already written setup will end here. Sung Min stared at the book with a rising worry. I have to fill it out carefully. If I'm not careful, I will cause conflicts with the previous settings. The more Sung Min thought about it, the more confused he became. I couldn't just write and delete it. I might end up destroying this world instead of creating it. Sung Min pondered for a moment and then firmly wrote, a reasonable reason that does not contradict the setting. The reason is this. After careful consideration, Sung Min decided to write down a rather vague reason that the character Larsen Mayton does not follow the rules of this world. Sung Min decided to write, I thought about writing about another reason, like because Larsen has transcended the Holy Grail, or because Larsen has transcended attribute mana, or because Larsen has holy body. But I think it's best to focus on Larsen Mayton rather than external factors. Sung Min felt satisfied with his own logical reasoning. The book quickly flew up as Sung Min finished writing. If I let myself as a character not follow the rules of this world, I will be completely free from the world's probabilities, and I will no longer be entangled in the preconceived notions of this world. It also means stipulating that Larsen Mayton is a special individual who, after the book disappears, the world also gradually returns to normal colors. The system displays information for Sung Min based on the guaranteed lack of probability. You have received the privilege of adding a line. The extra one-line perk will be usable for 10 seconds. Sung Min was shocked and a bit confused when he read the announcement. Another line. That evening, everyone returned to the famous swordsman's guest house to rest after a tiring day. Rudia was sleeping in a corner of the room with a dozing look, and her snores were as if they were carrying fire. Suddenly there was a loud knock on the door, forcing Rudia to open her eyes. She looked absent-mindedly outside. While still sleepy, Rudia opened the door. Someone standing in front of her was Magner with a massive body. Magner smacked his lips and introduced himself to the girl. I am Rosalind's uncle. I came with a famous swordsmanship family. Where is Larsen Mayton? Rudia suddenly got angry and raised her fist to threaten Magner. Are you planning on scolding him? Magner looked at her suspiciously. Do I look like a bad person? At this moment, Sung Min walked out of the bathroom, his body still steaming hot from the warm water. Magner peeked through the window and was overwhelmed by Sung Min's body. He trained his body well. Mana different from the fighting spirit was flowing throughout his body. Magner silently praised Sung Min. The majority of magicians concentrated their mana into their hearts, but he's unique, like a mutant. The more Magner observed, the more interested he became. Using mana wouldn't be very comfortable if he overtrained his muscles like his family's martial arts training. So this body must have been specially trained for magical combat techniques. Rudia shyly approached Sung Min with curious eyes. You have 8 dumplings in your belly. Can I touch them? Sung Min coldly replied, No. Some Min was a bit arrogant about this proud body and immediately raised his voice to order Hera, "Give me clothes." Hera suddenly appeared from nowhere with a set of clothes in her hand. "Yes, master." Magner was shocked again when he saw that scene. That waiter's moves were also on another level. How could he use such a strong person as a servant? No way. After changing, some men invited Magner into the room to sit and talk. Hera immediately brought out a plate of fruit. I had prepared some fruit dishes. Some men frankly told Magner, "I think you came to see me because you were curious about magic fighting techniques." Magner also frankly admitted, "Yes, it has aroused my curiosity." While Magner finished the fruit plate in the blink of an eye, some men slowly told him, "Me too, I'm also curious about martial arts." Magner replied, munching. He seemed confident that I would tell them about martial arts. Some men smiled smugly. "I'm sure you're curious enough about me to tell me about it." Magner shrugged and agreed, "Okay." Magner belched and continued the story. "Even if you learn martial arts from me, have you thought about the consequences?" Some men calmly replied, "That's why the prestigious swordsmanship family also invited him." Some men frankly said, "Ironically, my father's eyes and ears could not reach here. Even the head of the Dekitra family could not plant a spy in this sword family for many reasons. The prestigious sword family is the enemy's strongest lair, but in other words, it is also the safest place for some people." Magner smacked his lips and thought, "This cunning brat, wasn't he trained by Meitan?" Then he reluctantly told some men, "Then let me take a look at your body. Take off your shirt and turn around for me." Some men immediately did as Magner said. Magner placed his hands on some men's shoulders and held them firmly. His back was smooth and hard. It was unbelievable that this was the body of a 10-year-old child. This cannot be achieved only after a few days of practice. Magner told some men, "My fighting soul will roam around in your body. Don't resist it, just follow it." Some men looked doubtful and asked again, "Are you sure there are no side effects?" Magner clicked his tongue and replied, "Just trust me." Magner grumbled to some men, "What can you do if you don't trust me?" Some men took a deep breath and replied, "I will believe you." Magner thought to himself, "Cunning boy, he created a situation where I couldn't do anything about it. But he acted like he took the risk to trust me. He's so smart." As expected, as Magner predicted, a mischievous smile appeared on some men's lips. Everything was going according to his arrangements. Before, when he received the privilege of adding a line that could be useful for 10 seconds, some men spent a lot of time thinking about what to choose to write in it. Some men asked himself, what would an author give the main character? After careful consideration, some men added to the book, "The martial arts of the sword family." The fighting spirit reacts to Larsen Maiden's mana, allowing Larsen to grow without side effects. During this time, Magner infused his fighting soul into some men's body. Magner was surprised at what was happening. Had he merged with part of his fighting soul? This is what Maitan wants to show us. The more Magner thought about it, the more interested he became. A magician who could harmonize with the fighting spirit. Oh ho! This is the Maitan family's declaration of war. Magner curiously asked some men from whom did he learn magic fighting techniques. Some men grinned and answered honestly, "I'm self-taught." After that, Magner retracted his hand and said to some men, "I have analyzed your body. A magician who can absorb fighting souls. This is the first time I've seen this." Some men nodded seriously. "Yes, before that I also didn't know that a magician could do that." Magner smiled cuttingly and asked some men, "Are you admitting that a Maitan family member will grow up through the use of martial arts and the spirit of battle?" Some men smiled happily and replied without hesitation, "Yes, I should learn what I need to learn." Some men's answer surprised Magner. Learning what needs to be learned, the Maitan family considers swordsmanship to be trivial, and considered martial arts as something only for the incompetent. They look down on people who aren't magicians. But a member of the Maitan family has a new step, wanting to learn about martial arts and develop it. The more Magner thought, the more curious he became about some men's bold new thoughts. He frowned and squinted his eyes suspiciously, looking at some men's face. "Are you sure you are from the Maitan family?" Some men responded to the joke with a serious face. "If you ask what my father's name is, obviously my father is Dekitra Maitan." Magner heard that and burst out laughing. "I have never seen anyone like you before, so what do you want from me?" Some men immediately looked excited. "I can say it." Magner's sharp eyes looked into some men's eyes. You weren't going to say anything anyway, right? Don't waste time. Just tell me already. Sung Min smiled cunningly as if everything was in his calculations. Please become my advisor. After Sung Min made his request, Magner suddenly fell silent, a heavy feeling covering the atmosphere in the room. Before that, Sung Min thought very carefully. I was sure that there was a connection between combat magic and martial arts. My combat magic will become perfect when I can use combat souls and support martial arts as well. Sung Min's eyes flashed with determination. I will strengthen this weakness. After a moment of silence, Magner opened his mouth again with a startled voice. Did you just say advisor? Sung Min calmly nodded. Yes, I said that. Magner continued to react harshly. Do you think the Maiden family will allow it? Sung Min affirmed. I'm sure they will allow it. Magner still looked unconvinced. What the hell? Who are you? Sung Min calmly replied. I am the seventh son of the Maiden family, Magner said. I didn't ask that. Immediately after that, Sung Min added, at the same time, I am also a magician who wants to learn martial arts. Magner's eyes widened in shock. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Magner sighed and asked Sung Min again, do you know what you are saying? Sung Min replied confidently, yes. As a potential successor, it was like the Maiden family bowed to the Granville L family. Right after that, Sung Min smiled mischievously and glanced at Magner. But this War King, if you wanted to refuse my offer, you would have already refused. Magner thought to himself, this boy, he created a situation that I couldn't refuse, and made me even more curious while probing this boy's body. A bitter smile mixed with interest appeared on Magner's face because I did not refuse his offer right away. I lost to this kid. Sung Min continued speaking, but you didn't reject me right away. Aren't you interested in combat magic techniques? Magner sighed and sat down in his chair. I admitted that I was interested in what he had to say. Sung Min deliberately showed off his strength to provoke Magner's curiosity. Combat magic is most effective when combined with combat souls and martial arts, which will be my own new martial arts. Magner's heart immediately boiled with excitement and curiosity, but his reason still denied Sung Min's efforts. This is not something a Maiden magician should say. If he was born a magician, he must be a magician. After a moment of internal struggle, curiosity prompted Magner to ask Sung Min, can you tell us your strength for this? Since you met Rosalind again. Sung Min frankly admitted, yes, I saw you notice me. Magner laughed. It seemed he had something else in mind. So what was that duel for, because of this? Sung Min answered honestly again, yes, I also want Rosalind to not be angry with me anymore. Seeing that the opportunity had come, Magner's curiosity had reached such a level that he was tempted. Sung Min continued to push his decision with a question. The War King. Do you want to see the birth of a new type of martial art? Sung Min gave a mischievous and cunning smile. He was sure that someone as curious as Magner could not refuse such an attractive idea. Sung Min showed a mischievous and cunning smile. War King, do you want to see the birth of a new type of martial art? Magner was silent, but his heart was boiling with curiosity. Sung Min continued to state his plan. I'm planning on letting the prestigious Sade sword family take care of me here. Hearing that, Magner immediately expressed shock and protested harshly. The others would think he was a hostage. Sung Min turned his steady gaze towards Magner. Because I'm just a damn brat, so it doesn't matter whether I'm in the family or not. In exchange for me staying in the Sade family, father will definitely reap some benefits. Magner bluntly exposed Sung Min. The main reason you want us to take care of you is because this is the safest place for you, right? Sung Min nodded without hesitation. I'll say it straight. It's true. Magner's eyebrows immediately frowned. This is really too crazy. Magner squinted his eyes and looked at Sung Min suspiciously. I really don't understand that this is because he was raised like that by the Maiden family. Or are you some kind of weird mutant? Sung Min smiled calmly. I'll take that as a compliment. Magner wondered in his heart. This kid, he's so calm. He immediately understood that this was not an impulsive decision, but a pre-planned plan. Magner snorted and continued the story. I guess we'll have to find out about that ourselves later. Sung Min showed that he did not understand Magner's meaning and forced him to say it himself, which meant that Magner indeed continued. That's right. He smiled happily and told Sung Min, you can start from being my disciple. I will analyze your fighting techniques and magic little by little, and stare at the changes in your body and manna like an eagle. Magner said in a tone that was both interested and provocative, I will discover everything that Magner has been secretly preparing. During that time, you should try to learn everything you can from me. Sung Min's eyes immediately lit up and he shouted loudly with excitement, okay, that's what I want. After a while, even though it was midnight, Hampton was still sitting alone in the competition yard. Young master, is someone so great that I cannot understand? The boy thought thoughtfully about what had just happened in Sung Min's room. He was willing to let me eavesdrop because he completely trusted me. Hampton's tears suddenly flowed out of emotion. Moreover, I discovered that the world the young master dreamed about is a world where all three families live together in peace, a beautiful world where everyone is happy. Seeing Hampton sobbing unsightly, Hira suddenly appeared with a towel. Hey, a handkerchief. Hampton was startled by Hira's appearance. Ah, sister, you startled me. Why are you here? Hira coldly told the boy. Don't cry. Hampton wiped his tears and lamented. I still can't believe that you are also a shadow. At this rate, I will have a stroke. Hira coldly replied, if I die so easily then I am not worthy to serve the young master. Hampton immediately stiffened. You're so cold. Hira seriously told the boy. Hampton, you must have heard the young master's decision. Hampton hesitantly replied. Yes, he said. He will stay here. Hira nodded, which meant that when the birthday party ended, he would have to return to the main house to ask permission to do what he wanted. Her words made Hampton aware of the danger. Hira continued speaking bluntly. We may have to risk our lives to protect him. Hampton clenched his fist with a determined voice. Yes, because that was the duty of a shadow. Hira glanced at the boy, who seemed to be trembling despite his strong words, even when the homeowner punished him. Even though Hampton was shaking, the boy still did not change his mind. Yes, I will still protect young Master Larson. Hampton thought for a moment, and then the boy's eyes became more resilient, because young Master Larson was his light. After encouraging Hampton and seeing the boy's determined spirit, Hira immediately disappeared as if disappearing into thin air, making Hampton confused once again. In this quiet night, another pair of sisters were also talking to each other. Ailia received her brother's appointment and immediately went to the tulip garden. Do you want to meet me? Sung Min politely replied, yes, ma'am. Ailia asked her brother frankly. It seemed like he had something important to say. Sung Min smiled gently and nodded. She grasped the problem really quickly. I don't understand why Ailia suddenly felt a bit rushed to urge Sung Min. Why don't you just say it out loud? She turned her sad eyes to the vast flower garden in front of her. She felt that simple moments like these were so precious. To talk about something important. Standing in front of a field of flowers shining under the moonlight, Ailia's eyes revealed the light of a fragile and weak soul, different from usual. Sung Min saw Ailia looking intently at the flower garden and asked her, do you like tulips? Ailia nonchalantly replied, people are always attracted to beautiful things. Sung Min asked his sister again, I thought for you, magic is the most beautiful thing. Sung Min's question evoked painful memories in Ailia's mind when she was ordered to use magic to conquer everywhere. Ailia said with a sad voice, magic was once the most beautiful thing to her. For a moment the sound seemed to choke in her chest as Ailia thought of the lives that had died at her hands. No matter how many years have passed and how many wars she has gone through, Ailia still cannot forget the angry faces, the pain and destruction her magic can cause. After a few seconds of contemplation, Ailia continued to speak in a pitiful voice. Then magic became the cruelest thing to her. A ripple of pain was breaking the calm like a peaceful lake in Ailia's heart. She looked down at the flowers with heavy eyes. At least flowers don't harm people. Seeing that Ailia was confiding, Sung Min immediately smiled comfortingly. Sister, next time I will definitely give you a bouquet of flowers. Ailia looked a little confused at her younger brother. Right after that, she smiled as warmly as the spring sunshine that could make all the flowers bloom. Those words touched me. Ailia smiled affectionately and asked her younger brother, okay, then can I hear what my youngest brother wants to say? Sung Min frankly answered his sister, I want to stay here with this sword family. Ailia's eyes immediately changed to become suspicious. Larson, do you want to become the homeowner? Sung Min firmly shook his head. Not at all. If you want, you can test me with your ability. Ailia also frankly raised her hand towards her brother and used the Eye of Truth skill. Okay, it's better to check to be sure than not. In the moment the light from Ailia's magic flashed before Sungmin's eyes, he clearly felt like a CT scan was scanning his brain. In less than half a minute, Ailia lowered her hand. She was telling the truth. Then why were she so enthusiastic? For what purpose? Sungmin calmly replied, I want to live. Ailia knew Sungmin was being honest, but she was even more shocked when it was a sincere answer. I want live. Sungmin quickly explained by telling half of the truth. You know that, including my brother, young Master Lok. I also wanted to kill him. Sungmin showed that he was pushed to the end and had to try to rise up. His sincere eyes made Ailia completely believe in that reason, but she still disagreed with her brother. I know the inheritance war is very cruel, but siblings will not kill each other. Sungmin shook his head. No, sis, even our father killed his brother to get the position of homeowner. Ailia still questioned harshly. Okay, even if that's the case. So what? Why do you want to stay here? Sungmin calmly replied, I want to become stronger. Ailia frowned and asked, why? Sungmin said, because I want to live. Ailia frowned tighter. I asked because I thought you had another reason. Sungmin seemed reluctant to reveal that he actually wanted to protect. Seeing his younger brother hesitate, Ailia asked again, what is the right thing to protect? Sungmin replied sincerely, my mother and I. The moment we saw my brother's desire and love for his stepmother, Ailia was completely convinced. Even though Ailia is not weak, she is a soft-hearted person. More importantly, she loves the Maton family unconditionally because she protects everything that belongs to the Maton family, property, status, honor. She can become a devil or an angel. Anyone who harms the interests of the Maton family, even if they are children. Even Ailia did not hold back. Ailia recalls that during a conquest, she proactively let a boy survive by not capturing him and his family in the first place. Ailia didn't want to kill the boy until she saw the hatred in his eyes. She knew this boy's existence was not right for the Maton family, and in the end, she still had to kill him. The Divine Eye tells Sungmin that Ailia loves everything about the Maton family, but she despised the family's inheritance battle because she hates the members of the Maton family. She loves pointing their swords at each other and making each other bleed. Therefore, Ailia decided to do her best to become the head of the house. She vowed to become the absolute ruler with a reputation for being cold and emotionless in order to stop the war between brothers. Therefore, she needs magic that has power beyond all else. The power to achieve peace. Ailia is a magician who longs for that power. And that's also the reason she hunted the evil spirit Balrog in the 10-year ritual. Sungmin thought back and remembered that he had set up Ailia to hunt down the evil spirit Balrog. It was a much more difficult quest than the one completed by the other siblings, but she chose to hunt monsters instead of killing people, simply because Sungmin wanted to write like that to highlight Ailia's strength without thinking deeply. But now, facing the character he created, Sungmin suddenly felt pity. All the words I wrote without thinking much became their reality. It's not that difficult to write about someone's death. After all, it's just a few letters on paper. At that time, Sungmin simply thought that this was just a silly fighting novel to kill time, so he skipped going deep into the character's emotions. But looking at Ailia's current appearance and the sad look in her eyes, Sungmin realized that it wasn't just words anymore. Perhaps because of the complex feelings of sympathy and regret for Ailia, Sungmin remained silent for a long time before being able to open his mouth again. Sungmin steadfastly looked straight into Ailia's eyes. If she told her that she wanted to become stronger, to the extent that I could even protect you, do you consider it pride? Sungmin said with a completely serious expression, causing Ailia to be stunned for a moment. After a few seconds of being stunned, Ailia exclaimed in a shocked voice, "Are you protecting me?" Right after that surprised expression, a burst of laughter burst out. Ha 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 ha! Sungmin couldn't help but feel shy. This is the most genuine smile I've ever seen from Ailia. Ailia smiled and asked her younger brother, "Do you want to protect me?" This is the first time I've heard something like this. Sungmin confusedly replied, "So is that so?" Ailia laughed until tears flowed. "Always so comfortable when talking to you, little brother." Sungmin shyly looked towards the flower garden. "Please help me, I need to get my father's approval." Ailia replied thoughtfully, "I don't think father will agree." Sungmin looked up at Ailia with somewhat pleading eyes. "I will try to convince him." Ailia couldn't resist her brother's gaze, so she smiled gently and replied, "Okay, I will also convince father to help you. The next day, Kaesun's birthday party was held in a traditional Korean-style building built on a large lake. The melodious music echoed everywhere, creating a comfortable feeling for everyone at the party, except for some men who felt very unusual. A place that replicates the grand festival at Kampuk Palace, but maybe I was too careless in the setup when combining everything together like this. How can I arrange a classical orchestra at the festival for a long time? Some men looked at the Western orchestra in the Eastern context and he was stunned. Then, another feeling of shock happened to some men when he looked at Rudia. Where did she find such a cool outfit? Rudia eagerly pointed at Kaesun's birthday cake and even drooled. Larson, look, do you see that cake? It has 4 layers, Larson. Seeing a 4-layer cake is so cool. Some men felt confused. I find her shining face even more interesting. After a while, it was the birthday music's turn to play, and everyone said in unison to Kaesun, "Happy birthday, Kaesun." Hearing the congratulatory sounds from his friends, Kaesun immediately grinned and thanked everyone. Rudia smiled brightly and gave Kaesun a stone. "Kaesun, here is your gift. My father gave it to me. He said this was a lucky pebble." Kaesun smiled brightly and took the stone with both hands. "Thank you, Rudia." Rudia happily opened her sparkling eyes and looked at Kaesun. "Nothing. Can I eat my cake now?" Some men glanced at the rock and felt a bit skeptical. It looked similar to the rock I saw on the side of the road earlier. After that, it was Rosalind's turn to give Kaesun a gift. "This is a gift containing the sincerity of me and my family." Kaesun smiled brightly and took the gift from Rosalind. "Thank you, Rosalind." Her heart bloomed with just that one word of thanks. "Ah, he's talking closely to me." Although she likes it very much, on the outside Rosalind still looks shy. Nothing, Kaesun." When Kaesun put Rosalind's gift aside, some men frankly told the boy, "I didn't prepare any gift for you." When the two people's eyes looked straight at each other, they understood that the birthday gift was actually the competition that had been promised yesterday. So Kaesun still smiled and said to some men, "Okay," in the delicious chewing sounds of 2 gluttonous girls. Some men could still hear Kaesun's heart pounding as he thought about the competition that followed. The boy is a real competition fanatic. However, some men changed his mind. He told Kaesun instead, "I want to continue to stay here and duel with you more, even though this is not really a gift." Kaesun didn't understand what some men meant, so he was bewildered for a while. After that, Kaesun's face lit up with excitement. "Stay here, stay at my house." Some men nodded. "I will ask my father's permission." Kaesun felt so happy that he shouted, "Really, really?" The innocent Kaesun easily indulged in joy immediately. What a surprise gift! Some men also grinned. Really, in fact, he was glad to know that it wouldn't be difficult to convince the Sade family to let him stay, if only Kaesun had a say. Kaesun nodded excitedly. Yes, of course, being with friends is always fun. Some men immediately told the boy, "So, Kaesun, please notify the homeowner." Seeing Kaesun smiling brightly and nodding again, some men added, "And I will ask permission from the Magner family outside the party venue." Hira heard their entire conversation and couldn't help but worry about some men's safety when he returned to Magner's main house. After Kaesun's birthday party ended, that afternoon, the space gate was opened again to prepare to bring everyone back. When saying goodbye to Kaesun and Magner, some men was filled with joy. "Okay, I'm on my way to achieving 2 goals. The first is to bring Kaesun to my side so that if the worst happens, I won't lose my life. And second is to take advantage of Magner as much as possible." Kaesun happily waved to some men with even more excitement than when he welcomed him. "Larson, come back soon." Some men grinned and nodded. "Yes, I'll be back soon." Meanwhile, Rosalind just stood quietly on the side observing some men he was sure was not the Larson he knew. Rosalind hesitated for a moment before daring to speak. Next time, however, some men suddenly interrupted her. "I hope the next time we meet we can smile and greet each other." Rosalind was a bit sulky when her words were interrupted. She didn't bother to respond and went straight to the space gate. "I wanted to say that first, but at this time," Ailia confirmed with some men. "Little brother, do you know the dangers that can happen because of this?" Ailia carefully warned some men. "If father gets angry, no one in the Magner family can withstand that rage." Some men pondered for a moment, then said with a firm voice, "I'm confident." That evening, they returned to the Magner family's main mansion. Sung Min proactively went to Decatra's room instead of waiting for him to call. Sung Min stood nervously outside the door for a long time. He could feel a coldness in his bones. After a while, feeling more stable, Sung Min quietly opened the door. As soon as the door opened, he heard Decatra's cold, annoyed voice, "Without saying hello to me." Decatra gets straight to the point. "I have received a full report from Ailia. You said you want to stay with the Sade family." Sung Min calmly replied, "Yes, that's right." Decatra continued to question, "So do you know what this means to outsiders?" Decatra's eyes became sharp as knives and his voice was threatening. "If you don't make me understand, I will consider your actions as an insult to the family I own." The two insulting words that fell out of Decatra's mouth were as heavy as a dumbbell hitting Sung Min's chest. He couldn't help but shudder because for a famous family, insulting was synonymous with death. And at the same time, in the space in front of Sung Min, a strange object formed. When Sung Min took it, the holy eye displayed the information. The dagger suddenly died. If a mage under 3 magic circles touched the blade, that person will die immediately. Sung Min immediately swallowed in worry. Die immediately. A chill ran down Sung Min's spine. As expected, the price for this insult was death. Sung Min stared at the shining blade for a moment and tried to regain his composure. "Father." Sung Min showed no fear even though he was sweating coldly. "Do you remember when I said that the Sword Clan was hunting dogs?" Decatra coldly replied, "Yes, they are excellent pawns." Sung Min continued to explain, "The boy I met, Kasin, was especially weak towards human relationships and emotions." Decatra raised her eyebrows suspiciously and looked at her son. "Then what?" Sung Min immediately replied, "If I stay with him, I am confident that I will make him my pawn." A skeptical laugh escaped Decatra's mouth. "Ha, so that's the only reason you want to stay in the Hound clan." Sung Min continued to explain, "As for the rest of the magical world, my research on combat magic skills was not yet complete, but I saw the potential of those magic." Decatra started to feel a little interested. "Continue speaking." Sung Min then continued, "As I already knew, I have completed my second magic circle and there is something special hidden in my body." Decatra stared at her son with questioning eyes. "Are you talking about transcending the Holy Grail?" Sung Min's heart was slightly confused. "Did you already know that?" But he quickly regained his composure and continued, "Transcending the Holy Grail, with your special physical abilities and superior mana, your body has also responded to the fighting spirit of the famous martial arts family." Sung Min immediately revealed a stream of mana mixed with a bit of the fighting soul absorbed from Magner. "You have absorbed a small portion of the energy from the fighting spirit, and it is slowly accumulating more and more in your body." Sung Min took a deep breath and continued, "I received an invitation from the Sade family before. It proves that the relationship between you and that family has been established, and who invites you first is also very important." Sung Min reasoned fluently as he had prepared. Descendants of famous families in the world interacting with each other for the infinite development and happiness of the world. Would that really be considered a failure? Sung Min suddenly pointed the sword at his throat. That family of hound swordsmen would never engage in petty wars of public opinion. If they started the war of public opinion by saying that we have bowed to them, I will take full responsibility for that, and I will kill myself. Sung Min firmly pressed the blade deep into his neck. There was only a few centimeters of distance left. He could be so sure because he himself had set the Sade family towards an ideal family. Decatra opened his mouth after a moment of contemplation. "You seem so confident." Sung Min still held the knife to his neck and replied with a steadfast attitude, "Yes." Decatra asked again, "What about that next step?" Sung Min had not considered this question. He was a bit confused for a moment. Next. Sung Min put down his knife and knelt on one knee with reverence. "We are the ones who extended our hands forward to strengthen solidarity. With a more humble attitude, I'm sure you can understand how the public will perceive us, Father." Sung Min placed himself in the mind of the domineering Decatra and continued to say, "According to you, absolute power and strength are effective methods of ruling, but a warm hug, a mutual trust must always be there." Even though Decatra only stared at Sung Min with a frown, Sung Min knew he had said what he was thinking. Sung Min looked up at Decatra with more confidence. "Above all, humility is what creates truly lasting rule." Some men knew those were words that were not suitable for Deketra. But that was also how Deketra felt right now. Although hegemony and force are effective in instilling public fear and effective governance, their limits are clear. When it reaches its absolute position, Deketra begins to see its limits. Deketra said with a cold voice but no longer angry, "If you say such words and cannot do it, you won't be able to breathe anymore. Even though you know you've passed the door of death." Deketra's threat still makes some men's hair crawl. Deketra retrieved the dagger in some men's hand and waved his hand and turned away. "Okay, go. I will observe to see if you can do as you say." Some men breathed a sigh of relief, feeling, "Thank you, Father. I will definitely try to reach your expectations, Father." Then suddenly some men said again with a pitiful voice, "But Father, I'm still young. I'm only 10 years old." That attitude made Deketra angry again. He turned around and glared at his son. "Are you complaining?" However, some men didn't flinch. He even smiled. "So, I still need your warm love. Please let me go to the Sade family with my mother." The sudden request from some men surprised Deketra. Deketra suddenly burst into laughter that echoed throughout the room. Ha ha ha! He himself knew that So staying in this family was really not as safe as going with his son to Sade. But what made him happier was the way some men made his request. Deketra smiled contentedly and looked at some men. "Look, you really know how to move others," he silently exclaimed in his heart. "It's interesting that such a child is considered a failure." A moment of regret flashed through Deketra's thoughts. Unfortunately, its talent was combat magic, but strangely enough, why didn't anyone recognize his talent sooner? Just as some men had just brushed off his pants and stood up in a relieved mood, the holy eyes sent him a shocking message. Notification system. The magician of the sky has suspected the world's lack of probability. The probability has partially collapsed. Cold sweat ran down some men's back. The probability had partially collapsed. If the probability was completely destroyed, this world would collapse. He himself would also be destroyed. A wave of fatigue hit his mind. It seemed that even wanting to live peacefully in this world was not easy. Meanwhile, Ailia is in her mansion's office reading a book. In Ailia's hand, she was holding the book that some men had read in the days when he had just started researching the magic of this world. While Ailia was paying attention, a few slow knocks sounded on the door. She raised her eyebrows and looked towards the door. "No need to ask, you know who is outside." Seeing that Persia only knocked on the door as a courtesy, then opened the door herself and walked in. Ailia was not angry at all. "I really didn't expect you to come to my room to visit me, Persia." As soon as Persia entered, she smiled provocatively. "Sister, why are you holding that book? Why are you looking at basic magic books?" Ailia calmly took off her glasses and put the book down. There was nothing. Persia glanced at the book cover with a slightly surprised voice. "Alberto's 77th book, Easy Mana Cultivation Method. Larson is also reading that. I guess that book is popular recently." Ailia ignored her sister's question and said, "Persia, there's something I need to tell you." Persia giggled. "I came here because I also wanted to tell you something, sister," Ailia said frankly. "I won't beat around the bush." Ailia stood up and looked at Persia with cold eyes. A brilliant aura emitted from her body. "I will take care and pay attention to our little brother." Persia responded to Ailia's energy with her fire energy and a mischievous smile. "What a coincidence. I came here to tell you that too." The atmosphere in the room became tense as the two girls' mana clashed with each other. Ailia frowned at Persia's arrogant attitude. Could it be that Dad also gave Persia a chance? So the problem is that whoever has the boy's acceptance will be able to protect him. Ailia's eyes became even sharper and at the same time increased the amount of mana emitted a little more as she said, "This is not your problem, Persia." Persia calmly replied, "In fact, the person who has nothing to do with this matter should be me, right? I've had my eye on that kid for a long time." Ailia seriously threatened Persia, "If you refuse to cooperate, I will have no choice but to obey the laws of mana." Persia also increased her firepower with a sarcastic smirk. "You intend to use force to pin me down, right? You will fail again." Persia continued to chuckle sarcastically at Ailia. "You've had many opportunities to kill me before, like that time in Nupia Canyon." Ailia just remained silent. Persia was able to dominate further, mocking her sister for being too weak. "If I were you, I would have turned you into an invalid, but you didn't." Both cousins remembered that day, even though Persia was on the edge of the abyss, and Ailia could have easily sent her sister to heaven. In the end, she still couldn't do so. Before Persia realized it, Ailia's energy had absorbed a large part of her sister's energy. You were wrong, Persia. Persia didn't lose her smile, but she had to use a lot of stamina to control the wasted mana and continue to release more fire energy. Oh, really? In the blink of an eye, an explosion of light occurred. The room was quiet, but the light flashed brightly. It felt like it was exploding, but nothing actually exploded, not even a loud noise. Blood flowed from Persia's mouth and stained the carpet red. Persia's mana was dissipated after the explosion. Even though she was suffering from the pain of the mana fracture, she still smiled provocatively at Ailia. See, you're really weak. Ailia walked up to Persia in the blink of an eye and stepped on her sister's shoulder with her heel. Ailia pressed her legs down gently but enough to force Persia to kneel down deeply. It was an extremely humiliating position, but Persia did not care and continued to open her mouth. Why do you care so much about the youngest child? Ailia coldly replied, I have nothing to explain to you. Persia knelt close to the ground, but still had an arrogant smile on her lips. The way she reacted made me want it even more. Ailia glared and questioned Persia, so why do you want the boy? Persia giggled and replied in a casual voice, it was cute. Hearing an answer that was unimaginable based on her standards, Ailia immediately angrily kicked her foot hard, causing Persia to face down on the ground and stop joking around. After a cry, Persia continued to giggle. I heard that he had reached the second magic circle. You think I don't know? There must be a reason why a kid has such a special body, right? That's interesting. The second 10-year-old magic circle. Persia continued to laugh heartily. Besides, I sent a shadow to follow it, but that shadow suddenly disappeared. Persia's smile deepened. Plus, she suddenly seemed obsessed with that boy. Ailia finally realized why Persia came to see her. She came here to see my reaction. Ailia lifted her foot from Persia's shoulder then. Wake up, the adults will be here soon because of the mana riot that just broke out. Persia stood up with a giggle as if she didn't care about that. A glint of excitement flashed in Persia's bloodshot eyes. Seeing her reaction made me want the youngest child even more. At that moment, some men suddenly felt a chill as if a ghost was sitting on the back of his neck. While Ailia and Persia were having a silent fight over some men, he was preparing to have dinner with Soso. Seeing his son suddenly look panicked, Soso worriedly asked, What's wrong? Some men smiled and replied, nothing. At this moment, Hara brought up 2 plates of hot food. Young master, your food is spaghetti and meatballs. Seeing Hara, some men secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Having Hara here means the possibility of being assassinated will be lower. What a relief. He turned to her and said, Thank you. Hera smiled friendly and replied, No problem, you've had to eat a lot during your growing age. Intuition immediately told some men that she seemed friendlier than usual, which was suspicious. He quickly activated his holy eye and inspected the plate of food, spaghetti and meatballs for signs of Seiken. According to information from the holy eye, Seiken is a deadly poison for people without mana, but for people with mana, the poison is not deadly, so it is often used to foster poison resistance. Some men swallowed hard. Hey Hira! Hira immediately asked him, What's going on? Some men acted naive and didn't know anything. Is there anything special in the dish? Hira firmly shook her head. Nothing, sir. Hira remembered her past and felt that she was not ashamed of her answer. Hira was telling the truth. She grew up eating Seiken since she was 3 years old, so by her standards, it was nothing special. Some men smiled, wryly looking into Hira's eyes. Probably not anything special, but something like poison or something similar. Suddenly at this moment Hampton ran over and knelt down with tears in his eyes. Young master, I forgot to inform you. It's because I was careless. Please kill me. Some men replied with a sigh. First stand up and then explain. After hearing Hampton explain that the idea of adding Seiken to his master's food was because he wanted to make his poison resistance stronger, some men sighed again. I understand. Hera looked at some men curiously. How did you know? Some men did not expect Hera to ask like that. He instantly replied, Well, intuitively. Hera did not know where he got a pair of round glasses and put them on his eyes. He had excellent observation and judgment. You must have smelled Seiken. Hera's eyes seemed very satisfied. He was also very smart to answer that it was intuition. Sung-min didn't pay too much attention to Hira's praise, but just stared at her glasses. Where did she get those glasses from? In her heart, Hira silently praised Sung-min. You always exceed my expectations. She calmly declared, I will continue to do my best to be your shadow and help you become stronger. Right after that, Hira looked towards the bewildered Soso. Ah, there's more. Ms. Soso's dish is specially flavor adjusted by me. You don't need to worry about anything strange in it. Hira looked at Soso with warm eyes, different from when talking to some men. Soso smiled brightly at the female assassin's kindness, thanking Hira. After finishing the meal, some men returned to his room still worried. The Holy Grail appeared to reassure him. I'm already here. Some men grimly replied, after all, it's still poison. The Holy Grail told him confidently. That kind of poison is nothing. Some men looked at the staggering appearance of the Holy Grail and said that, but you look so drunk. The Holy Grail said in a drawling voice, hey, listen, back in the day, I was better. Just as the Holy Grail was about to brag about its past achievements, Rudia opened the door and peered in after just one knock. Rudia couldn't wait to eat the 5-layer cake again, so she went to ask some men, when are we going to leave? Some men immediately replied. At 8 a.m., Rudia looked disappointed and pleaded, can we go now? I want to eat cake too. Some men shook his head. Now we can't go through the portal. Rudia quickly approached some men's bed with a regretful look, really. And then, completely naturally, Rudia lay down on the bed to some men's surprise. So now I'll go to sleep. As long as I go to sleep, tomorrow will come soon. Rudia fell asleep exactly 2 seconds after finishing his sentence. Some men didn't like having his bed taken over and called Hira. Can you hear me? Hira suddenly appeared in the corner of the room. Yes, young master. Some men couldn't help but be startled. Ah, how long has she been there? However, he did not show that surprise because he did not want Hira to develop a new practice. Some men tried to act calm, take Rudia to her room. Without waking her, Hira immediately received the order. I understand. Hira turned invisible in the blink of an eye and picked up Rudia, making her seem like she was floating in the air. The room door opened and closed extremely quickly and quietly, making some men silently admire in his heart. It was Hira, so impressive. The next morning, a beautiful new day promises an exciting journey ahead. A carriage was sent to pick everyone up at the Maple Mansion. Hampton sadly told Soso, it's a pity we have to go by carriage. But Soso smiled gently and shook his head. It's okay. During this period, driving with magic was a privilege only available to the nobles. Having a car to pick up their mother is something that will make other mothers jealous. But some men understands that they don't need to attract jealousy now. It will be more dangerous than admiration. Some men stepped into the carriage with excitement. Now he will take the first step of independence.